Welcome to Last in Line podcast, where we are highlighting, showcasing, and spotlighting great leaders of faith who have overcome adversity, cultivated resilience, and served others in a significant capacity. So settle in and be encouraged by this episode of Last in Line podcast. Gentlemen, welcome back. Glad to have you. Welcome to Last in Line Leadership, and I am your host, John Shibley, and I hope you are excited as I am about this episode. Representing two coffee shops, neither of which are sponsors, but hopefully I'm not causing any rift amongst anybody out there. Got Black Rifle Coffee, and then I've got Summer Moon Coffee, and I might be drinking community coffee, actually. So good. All three families of coffee are represented. All right, guys, I got a good one here. It's gonna hit you at, where it hurts. It's gonna hit you right in the kitchen, as I always say, but it's timely and it's necessary, and it's pretty much 90% for me, because I've lived this and I continue to live it. If we're growing, then we're continuously learning, and this particular topic should resonate and land wherever we are in life, really. It's called Sold Out Sacrifice tonight. 4 areas where the juice is worth the squeeze. So we're going to talk about sacrifice. Anything, everything worth anything is going to cost you something. And I say the bigger the sacrifice, I think the bigger the payoff. You've heard, you got to spend money to make money. And sometimes the bigger the risk you take financially, sometimes the yield and the return is bigger. It's just math, and I get it. And it's not a finance talk tonight, thankfully, although we might touch on it a little bit. But 4 areas where the juice is worth the squeeze here. And so I'm going to give you just flat out basic 101 definition of sacrifice. Before I do, I want to thank Uncommon, who is a supporter of ours, uncommon.org. It's UNCOMMEN.org. It is equipping men to be the husbands, dads, and leaders that they were called to be. And need to reach out to Uncommon on Instagram, send them a message, and find out more about them. But they're doing good work. Can't have too many ministries out there that are helping dudes be better dudes. So hopefully that's what we're doing. So yeah, dictionary.com says sacrifice is defined as to surrender or give up or permit injury or disadvantage to for the sake of something else. I don't think we have to look any further than the cross to see the ultimate sacrifice. So you're all believers. A lot of you are anyway. And if you're not, read the story of Jesus and the cross, and you won't find a bigger sacrifice out there. And so for the sake of something else would be just humanity in general, all of us, the sacrifice was made. So we, as people, as image bearers of Christ, are called to make similar sacrifices. Obviously, we'll never get to the pinnacle of that type of sacrifice as what Jesus went through. But look, it's all relative, right? So you and I have different sacrifices that cause different levels of anguish or different levels of pain, of different levels of inconvenience and hardship. Like, we experience different levels of it, but it could mean as much to us depending on the stage of life we're in. So the price is going to be high for the sacrifice you have to make in order to yield an eternal return. So if we're seeing through the lens of eternity, we're seeing through the lens of something beyond this tiny little finite piece of existence that we experience in life, this world. If we see a bigger picture, then the sacrifice is worth it. The juice is worth the squeeze here. Hard things, though, are not always physical. We talk a lot about doing hard things. We talk a lot about putting our body through, the ultimate test or an endurance test, physical challenge, soreness, lifting weights. I mean, I lift weights, you lift weights, you run, I don't run. Thank you very much. I got to tell you, for those endurance runners, I love you guys. I could never do what you do, but bless your heart, if the crap ever hits the fan and you're ever forced to have to deal with somebody physically in a, let's say the world falls apart even more than it already is, what is running 10 miles, 20 miles, 100 miles going to help you with? Yeah, you're mentally tough, but I'm putting my money on the guy that can push and pull a bunch of heavy stuff around multiple times throughout the week. Not trying to put myself up above anybody, but I'm just saying this is why, when you're judging me, why I don't run. I don't feel like that's going to help me in a hand-to-hand combat situation. All you jiu-jitsu guys, though, I have very high respect and admiration for. I might be a little late in the game for me to try that, but have a little bit of wrestling background. That's about as far as it'll go. So hard things aren't always physical, guys. We see it. You could probably flip on Instagram right now and have see a video of somebody telling you to do hard things, telling you to test your body, telling you might even see me saying it, which I agree you do, but it's not limited to that, right? Not limited to, but it does include that. So facts about sacrifice that I wrote down. Again, sold out sacrifice, guys. It's not sacrifice. The definition isn't, to surrender or give up because it is convenient and you have the time and it lines up with your day and it might just fit into something that you need and you stand to gain from it. It's not that. It's sacrifices. Chances are you have a lot to lose. Chances are you have a huge investment. You have a huge risk you might be taking. Chances are the downside's greater for you, but the upside is for someone else or a greater good or a bigger picture. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. So I have some facts about sacrifice here. Sorry if I was coming at the endurance guys, but I mean, I'm jealous. I can't run, 500 feet, let alone 100 miles. But no, I just was making a comment to basically defend and make excuses why I don't run. So anyway, caveat, big time, I digress. Sacrifice requires commitment to a bigger picture. I think I just said that, but that's definitely true. Like, it cannot be you looking through a microscope about yourself and just your immediate sphere. It's a bigger picture. Sacrifice, in order for it to be worth it, right? You heard me say earlier, everything worth anything will cost you something. So if it's worth anything, it's going to cost you something, and it's going to be bigger than you. So that's one fact. Second fact about sacrifice is sacrifice disregards feelings and temporary gratification. Yeah. Or it wouldn't be called sacrifice, right? It'd just be called doing what I like to do because it feels right. Convenience, it'd just be called really and truly flesh, desire, whatever you want to call it, but it's really more about you at that point. So it's not a sacrifice. If it involves your feelings and it involves a temporary gratification for you or instant gratification, don't call it a sacrifice because it's not. Chances are there's very little gratification, if any, for you in that situation. I mean, think about it. When you sacrifice for the sake of your marriage and you do things you don't want to do, and maybe you're cleaning the house for your wife before she gets home from work, or you volunteer to go to the grocery store when you hate it with all that it stands for. But you do it. That's a sacrifice. Okay. When you decide to take the laundry out because she's busy cooking dinner, that's a sacrifice. It is for me anyway. Now, granted, there's no pain involved, but literally it's the last thing I want to do is fold laundry. Sacrifice at work, guys. I mean, I do it a lot, almost daily. Have to deal with people that I don't want to deal with. Have to work with team members that I can't stand being in the same room with. Have to do certain administrative tasks or fill out reports or do presentations on PowerPoint that are really a dog and pony show, song and dance every year. That's stuff that I don't want to, that's a sacrifice, but look, it's part of the job. And I will say sacrifice can actually be included in part of your job or part of your relationship. Like, it's included. I'm not saying it always has to be something outside the realm of of normal. But it could just be part of your normal cost of doing business every day, but it's still painful. It's still something you dread doing. It's still something that rubs you the wrong way sometimes, but that's how it's a sacrifice. But it's probably most likely for a bigger picture, a greater good, most likely. Sacrifice is not short-sighted. Again, you got to see a long-term gain, got to see long-term benefit. Of course, your marriage is worth it because that's a lifelong thing. Your job isn't lifelong, but it's going to be around a while unless you hit the lottery or unless you retire. So it's not short-sighted. Sacrifice you have to be seeing beyond the initial pain, the initial discomfort, the initial inconvenience. You got to see past that because it's got to be worth something. Again, I'm going to come back to that saying, because I'll be honest with you. I came up with that. The everything worth anything will cost you something. I came up with that, and I'm going to keep coming back to it. I'm going to keep hammering that. I'm going to beat that dead horse all night on here. But really, like, it's not short-sighted, because if it's going to cost you something, then it's worth something. And, that encompasses anything that's worthwhile, which is most likely down the road. Because a lot of the things that are worthwhile don't happen easily and don't happen quickly. And I will say this last one here on facts about sacrifice. Sacrifice trims the fat. Sacrifice trims excess, unnecessary. So there's a lot of things you may have to cut out. There might be people you have to cut out. If they're impeding your growth or progress, or they're a toxicity that's maybe just kind of poisoning your spirit, poisoning your emotional state, poisoning your personality and the person that you come across. Like, if that person's poison, then we cut them out. We move on. After we've given them an opportunity to change, they just don't want to, then we trim the fat. So sacrifice require, you may be a lifelong friend of yours, but that's sacrifice. Look, I got to cut them out of my life. Or I got all these idols here, these, Netflix, if you will, or sweets, or if you're an alcohol person, tobacco person, whatever you're addicted to, if it's porn, that's an idol in your life, because you're literally sacrificing other things so that you can have that fulfillment or that temporary gratification. So that's trimming the fat. You got to get rid of those idols that get in between you and God spiritually. Anything that goes above him, got to get it out of there, or you got to move it down the list. You got to temper it. Okay. You got to, in moderation, certain things, if it's trumping your spiritual life or your spiritual health. And sometimes it's people, sometimes it's money, sometimes it's, if your idol is money and you'll do anything at all costs, you'll sacrifice people you love to go work more than you need to make that extra dollar. Look, that's an idol. We got to cut that stuff out. We got to back it down, reassess our priorities. So there you go. Those are some facts that should set the stage. Okay. Because sold out sacrifice means that we are committed regardless of the cost. And we've identified the reward to be worth it. We've identified the people it's going to benefit to be eternally impactful. It's going to be part of our legacy. So our sacrifice is worth it if that's what our name gets attached to long term and forever, actually, for people behind us. What we leave behind, the evidence we were here of our contribution. If our sacrifice is worth that cost, that's how we know. That's how we know it's worthwhile. And so there's 4 areas here I kind of want to touch on when it comes to sacrifice. Of course, we kind of talked about some of these. I might dig in a little on some and maybe peel back some of the layers, get a little more granular on it. But so the first one will be fitness, let's say. So we talked about that, but you got to take those small strides. Sacrificing involves little steps at first. I'm not saying we got to cut open a wound to experience the sacrifice that makes it worthwhile. Sometimes we got to maybe just kind of scratch the surface. Maybe we just got to kind of take a step, go to the gym, or maybe invest in some workout equipment at your house. Take that step. You got to get the equipment before you can use the equipment. And so make small strides. And I think setting a good expectation that there will be pain. Fitness requires that. I guess speaking to myself, if I was going to try to run, I have to understand, look, I'm going to die in the first mile. My ribs are going to feel like they're like puncturing a lung. They're going to feel like they're exploding inside my torso. Yeah, I have to expect that. And that has to be part of my willingness to sacrifice. Like I have to be willing to say, look, this is what I want. Running might help me in my long-term health, right? It's not going to help me in a fight. Just kidding. But yeah, if I have to expect that, I have to understand what that is. So I got to be able to push past that, even though I expect it. Like that, expecting that pain is going to help me move on past it. And then I got to make the time. There's really no excuse for you not being in shape or you not being physically capable because you're out of time for the day. I don't. There's no way. I've worked out for 25 years, maybe more. I lost track, but I can tell you there are times where I've worked out an hour. There's times where I've worked out 40 minutes. I mean, if you really want to, especially when you're starting out, you could knock it out in 30 minutes and just take limited rests and understand that you're building up your tolerance for this. And you can get more intense with it and you can make it longer. But I promise you, if you start small and you understand that there will be pain and it's temporary, if you understand that you do have the time, make the time, start small, you'll get addicted to it. And then you'll actually want to do it longer. And so you'll create more time, right? You'll realize you had more margin in your day. Second one here is finances, of course. I could have been better at this my whole life. My wife and I, we've taken Financial Peace University. We've made decent money for a long time. But I think she and I would agree we've probably lived beyond our means, right? We didn't really get this whole sacrifice element fully. Yeah, we made some sacrifices a little bit for ourselves, like me, her. We don't go buy fancy stuff. We don't do fancy hobbies, take fancy trips. But having 4 kids, you just have these expenses, and then all of a sudden something air conditioner goes out, and then you're putting something on a credit card, and so you didn't plan well. So we didn't sacrifice enough. And I think there's levels of sacrifice, but in our situation, could have done better with finances. We're in a good place now, but I mean, we had to get there. It's been a long time and we were up and down a lot. So hopefully you're starting out early in life. Hopefully you understand how to save, how to tithe, how to live beneath your means, well beneath it. If I could do it over again, I'd probably do that. But look, giving, that's a sacrifice. Like the tithing part is a sacrifice in and of itself. I mean, if you make $2,000 a month and you're giving 200 of that away, that's a lot. Like that feels like a lot, doesn't it? But I always say God can do way more with 90% of my stuff than I can do with 100% of it. So I'm willing to trust that. It's not mine anyway. That sounds, it's easier said than done, but I think tithing is obviously a principle that's non-negotiable. We've done it for years. That's the only way I think we've made it certain years where my income hasn't been as great as it was in the past, or certain years. And we have sacrificed, but then we've also been spread really thin. And we've also known what it's like to stress how we're going to pay the bills. But tithing, like God did something with that, and it was a sacrifice for us, and I think he honors that. I know he does. So giving's hard, but if you do it with the right heart, I mean, you understand it's a principle. Sowing and reaping is a principle. Giving's a principle. I think it's making it about something bigger than you. It's a bigger picture. It's a long play. It's a long game. It's not a short-term situation. I mean, if you're winning in the short term financially, but you're not giving and you're spending frivolously and you're, a bad steward, I guess, of your resources, that may be okay in the short term, but long term, you're going to have some things to answer for. And I think you're probably going to have some regrets at the end of the road. So make giving a priority, even though it's hard. And you got to tell yourself no, right? That's part of living beneath your means. You got to tell yourself no. And that's a sacrifice. Look, we live in an instant gratification. We live in a self-talk, of course, but we want to love ourselves, right? We want to treat ourselves. Hey, I deserve this. There's that word. I hate it so much. I deserve this. So I'm going to go buy this $500 watch or $1,000, motorcycle. I don't even know how much motorcycles cost, but whatever. This is for me. This is some me time. Okay, that's not a sacrifice. You're going to sacrifice later because you screwed up and spent money on something stupid, but you got to tell yourself no. That's finances. Okay, that's the second one. Again, 4 areas where the juice is worth the squeeze. Sold out sacrifice. Sold out sacrifice means you leave it all on the field. You're sacrificing and it's painful, but there's a reward. It's worth it. The third one here is family, of course. You've got to understand what quality time is. Quality time is not when it works for you always, because the person benefiting from that is the other person. You will too, but that's not why you do it. You're creating quality time with your family, with your kids, with your wife. It takes being on purpose, and it takes intentionality to do that, because we could obviously say, I don't have time, but quality time is quality for a reason, because you made the investment, you made the decision, you made the choice, you intentionally spent that time, invested that time. And you could have been out fishing. You could have been playing poker with the guys. You could have been watching TV, playing video games. God help you. If you're a grown man and you're playing video games more than you're spending time with your wife or kids, shame on you, man. Give me a call. Love to talk to you. But I don't think anybody listening to this is doing that. Thank you. I'm glad. If you are, dump it in the trash, sell it, do something else with it. But quality time involves a choice and involves being on purpose. And it's not about your needs. It's about those other people. And the people that are going to matter when you're on your deathbed that are gathered around you are not the people at the golf course, or not the people at the poker table. Okay. They're not the people at your job, in your cubicle. They're the people in your 4 walls of your home that you're not spending the time with because you don't want to make that commitment, that sacrifice, because your needs should be last. In the whole realm of the definition of sacrifice, your needs come last. Now, eventually, if you make the sacrifice on the front end, your needs most likely get met. God will honor that. Sacrifice is biblical. It is something he honors. But right now, in that moment, that pain, that hardship, that discomfort, that inconvenience, you ain't getting much out of that. Okay. It's not about your needs. So when quality time, when the smoke clears, the legacy you leave is about those people that are your immediate family, your wife and your kids. That's what matters. That's quality time. And that's worth the sacrifice. That's the third one, family. The last one's faith. Guys, it's a sacrifice to be in your job when you're not surrounded by the Billy Grahams of the world. You're not surrounded by, the 12 disciples. You're in hostile territory sometimes. You're in atheist territory. You're in, hell, you might even be in satanic worshiper territory. I don't know where you work, but there's some dark people. There's some twisted up folks. You're going to walk in and be the minority, most likely, in spiritually speaking. But I mean, faith requires sacrifice. It requires living in the flesh and or the spirit, not the flesh. Your flesh would tell you, I'm going to go along to get along. Your flesh would tell you, okay, I can be a Christian here, but over here, I mean, I lived that. I had 2 different lives, basically. I was serving, I was in leadership, I was having lunch with pastors, and then Monday through Friday, I'm going to work and I'm surrounded by folks that weren't like-minded, and I got sucked into trying to please people, trying to gain their acceptance, trying to, get that affirmation, and ego set in, then pride sets in, and then all of a sudden I'm living in the world and I'm living of the world and I'm not representing my faith. And that's unfortunate because you can't get that back. It would have required a sacrifice on my part to stand firm, to resist any temptation, to resist any worldly things that were out there trying to suck me in and knock me off the horse. And I was weak in those situations. So you can't undo and you can't redo, but I can tell you, I could be the cautionary tale for you. And if you're on this line and you're teetering back and forth, you got 1 foot in the pew and 1 foot in the world, at your job, make the sacrifice, damn the consequence, live for your faith. Don't live for other things that are temporary. Your spirit over your flesh. I mean, the Bible says, you sow to the flesh, you will reap destruction. You sow to the spirit, you will have eternal life. Like, that is where it's at. So that's what we're sacrificing for. And it may not even be a sacrifice, really, but I mean, on the surface, it is. You are having to compromise. Like, you are not having to compromise your faith in those situations. You're sacrificing getting sucked in to doing what everybody else is doing. But it's going to be lonely on that road. It's going to be narrow, right? Talks about the eye of a needle, right? The road is narrow, okay? The road to righteousness. And so I say, stay on that, sacrifice these other things when it comes to your faith. Sacrifice what the world tells you is gratifying, what you need, finger quotes, what you need, okay? The world's got what you need. No, they don't. The world is temporary. The world is fleeting. The world and all its possessions, all its material possessions are rusting, they're withering, and they're temporary. So that's the thing. It's going to take sacrifice for you to stand for something. It's going to take sacrifice for you to speak up when everybody at the water cooler is talking about all the transgender stuff, and we should just go along and accept all these people and just tolerate everything that's going on. It's this and that, and we don't have to stand for that. We don't have to talk. We can actually speak up against it. As long as we're staying true to the scriptures and we're staying true to loving people, we can tell them the truth. We don't have to be so super fluffy with it, and we don't have to cower to their way of thinking. We don't have to cower. It really shouldn't even be an us and them, but unfortunately it kind of is. And so we have to stand in the gap, and we have to stand and represent and stand up for those things. I know you know that. I'm preaching to the choir. So, but those are the 4 areas, guys: fitness, finances, family, and faith. Okay. Like, those are the 4 areas where the juice is worth the squeeze. The sacrifice is worth it. What I say earlier, everything worth anything will cost you something. So look, I know I've got a group of people here willing to step up, willing to sacrifice, willing to experience a little pain, little discomfort, little inconvenience, little hardship, little trial, little trauma. I know I got a group of warriors. We got an army of people here listening that know what sacrifice is, that are willing to continue to do it, that know other people are watching you. So if you can sacrifice, they can too. And that's going to snowball, and that's going to be a domino effect in a good way. So more people that sacrifice, more people that say no to things, more people that say yes to the right things, the more difference and impact we have in the world, guys. Sold out sacrifice. Be sold out. The juice is worth the squeeze. With that, be blessed.